host Farah Hannoun, and we are live on YouTube for the very first time. Today, I'm going to be joined by Hablemos MMA podcast host Danny Segura. Danny, what's up?
Yo, what's going on, Farah? How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. Excited to be. Let me fix this camera a little bit. There we go. I'm excited to be here with you and finally be on YouTube. Damn, took a little bit, but we're here. And I'm excited to talk some fights, man. What a great way to debut these preview shows that you do on YouTube with this card. I think this is one of the better cards of the year, and I'm super excited for it.
I agree. And it's funny, when this card was being put together, I didn't know what to think about it. But looking up and down, there are a lot of kind of veterans, notable names, a bit of everything, exciting fights, and obviously the return of Jon Jones. He defends his heavyweight title against Stipe Miocic. And you've had a lot to say about Jon Jones. Very animated this week. If you guys haven't checked out Overreaction Time, you should check that out with Danny. Let's start off with this. What do you kind of make of Jon Jones' title defense being against Stipe Miocic and not Tom Aspinall? Now, remember, of course, they were booked scheduled to fight UFC 295. Fight gets scrapped because Jon Jones gets injured. They create the interim title, which Aspinall wins. He defends. But now we've got Stipe and Jon Jones. And look, it was the scheduled bout for UFC 295. So can you just put Stipe to the side? I don't know about that. What do you think?
I don't like this fight at all. I mean, this is a sport at the end of the day. The title usually in the UFC determines who is the best fighter in this sport. UFC just has that premier feel, and they've established themselves as number one. So we're used to just seeing, hey, whenever there's a title fight, we are going to find out who the best at that weight class is. But I don't think we can say that, or we can specifically answer that question with the result that we're going to get tonight. Because one, Francis Ngannou's still out there. He just won in PFL, and he never lost a UFC belt. And two, we got Tom Aspinall that not only has cemented himself as the number one contender, but has won an interim title and defended it. So I don't like this fight in terms of sporting merit. Say if Jon Jones were to drop the belt and they were just supposed to do this as a super fight, legacy fight, I think that's fine. I am excited for the fight specifically. But as far as like the fight being for the belt, that's what I have an issue with. But look, at the end of the day, I don't make these decisions. Here we are, and I am excited to watch this pay-per-view. And despite the controversy, I do think it's going to do quite well. And I actually think all this controversy with Tom Aspinall and everything, it's made the fight bigger. Not only do you have two fighters promoting this event, but three. Tom Aspinall has been a big help in promoting this fight and getting it to, on the right eyeballs and all that.
I think for me personally, the problem is obviously Jon Jones publicly saying time and time again that he's not interested in fighting Tom Aspinall. I don't know at this point if he's trolling. I do feel with Jon Jones, there's always a little element of that. We're hearing Dana White say, the winner should absolutely fight Tom Aspinall. But for me, because it was scheduled back then, it kind of would have been weird to just put Stipe to the side, even though I do believe that Jones versus Aspinall is the fight to make. So that's where it is for me. But I think the bigger problem is Jon Jones reiterating that he's not interested in fighting Tom Aspinall, talking about how he'd stick around if it was Alex Pereira. What do you make of kind of Jon Jones's comments? Do you think there's an element of him trolling a little bit? Does part of you ever believe it's a possibility that he could end up fighting Tom Aspinall if he decides to stick around? Or do you what do you kind of make of him just being so public? Because he could have just said, I don't know what I'm going to do after this fight, right? He didn't have to say, I'm not going to fight Aspinall.
Yeah. I pray that that's the case. I pray that he's trolling. I pray that this is sort of public negotiation, but I don't think it is. If gun to my head, I genuinely think he doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall for all the reasons he's given. And they all make sense. Like if he was struggling to get past a Thiago Santos years ago, past a Reyes, imagine what could happen against the Tom Aspinall. I think it's a huge risk. We rarely see good endings to careers in MMA. Most fighters, most legends retire off losses, and Jon Jones has sort of been one of the few that has avoided that throughout the years. And here he has an opportunity to get a big win, log in a title defense as being a second champion, a champion in second weight class. So yeah, it doesn't make sense to fight Aspinall. And I do want to correct something. I feel like a lot of people are saying like, Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall, and he absolutely is. But a lot of people are saying Jon Jones is scared of Aspinall, and I don't think that's the case. I think, if they were to be at a bar and Aspinall were to try him, I think Jon Jones would have no problem throwing down with him. He just understands that there's a good chance he might lose that fight. and he doesn't want to risk his legacy and everything that he's done. So, yeah. Anyways, to sum up your question, I don't like those comments at all. I need to see that Tom Aspinall fight. I really do, and I just hope that if he wins, he either retires, vacates the belt, but just doesn't defend it against somebody else not named Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I agree with what you said as well about him not necessarily being scared of Tom Aspinall. I just think that he looks at Aspinall as another name on his resume, where right now at this point in his career, maybe a fight with Aspinall doesn't get him excited. But Aspinall is obviously looking like a very special fighter. He's done incredible things so far. He did win the interim title, and he's looking like a guy that we can be talking about down the line as a future Hall of Famer. But Jon Jones's line of thinking, I get it. It's like too early to determine that, because there's a lot of guys that were up on the rise and looked like they had potential of being greats. But I totally understand Aspinall's frustration. He's been hanging around New York trying to get his attention. Do you think they're going to let him in the cage and kind of face off, because that's what he wants to do?
No, I don't think they will. The UFC has a lot of respect for Jon Jones, and Jon Jones is one of the very few fighters like Conor McGregor that they have a little bit more control over their careers than most other fighters. They actually get to say certain things. So in that end, I don't think the UFC would want to put Aspinall in there and put Jon Jones in that position and sort of piss him off and be in bad terms with him, because he wouldn't take that well. So I kind of just hope that Tom Aspinall breaks the rules a little bit and then sneaks his way into the cage, or somehow finds his way in the cage, and maybe we can get a face off or something. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I think I'm more excited, to be honest, about the aftermath. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see obviously good old heavyweight action, but I'm more excited to see like what happens, like where does this all lead to, because it's certainly very interesting. I think if Jon Jones wins, it's super interesting. I think if Stipe wins, and I think people are sleeping on him, if he wins, that gets super interesting as well. So yeah, all in all, I'm excited for tonight, and let's see what happens.
And this is what I was going to get to, because all the narratives, all the questions I've asked so far, we're talking like Jon Jones is winning this fight. And I think that's very disrespectful to Stipe Miocic. Now, according to BetMGM, he is a -700 favorite. Surprisingly, not the biggest favorite of the night. There's three -1,000 favorites, which I'll get to shortly after. But -700 favorite over Stipe, who's +475. I get it. Stipe is 42. He hasn't fought since a knockout loss to Francis Ngannou in March 2021. He does look in great shape, though. And Stipe Miocic, when you break it down skill for skill, his grappling, his boxing. And I said this, and I got a little bit of criticism when I looked at. Actually, I think I got criticism from Aspinall himself.
Criticism.
But when I looked
at
it,
MMA
yeah. Well, no, actually, because I was asking when. Well, yes. But when Jon Jones fought Cyril Gane, I didn't feel like we saw much. Like when the few minutes, like seconds, he was slow. I get it. It's the first time he tries out his heavyweight body. I get it. He was coming off of a long day off. I didn't see enough for me to be like, yes, he did run through him. He did submit him. You can't say anything about that. But I wanted to see more. I wanted to see his cardio. I wanted to see the striking exchanges. I just felt like, he said it himself, he felt like he was robbed of that moment because it happened so fast. So I feel like there are a lot of question marks surrounding Jon Jones as well. I don't know what you think.
100%. And that's what I've been saying over. I'm not even sure if I've said it in English, but I've certainly said it a ton in my Spanish language channel, Hablemos MMA. Dude, since February of 2020, so almost nearly 5 years, half a decade, we've only seen 2 minutes and 4 seconds of fighting from Jon Jones. And in those 2 minutes and 4 seconds, he wasn't tested at all. So why are people so confident to put a -700 label on Jon Jones, keeping in mind that he's only fought 2 minutes in 5 years? And he hasn't been tested. And then before those 5 years, he wasn't looking great. I thought he lost to Dominic Reyes. I thought he lost to Thiago Santos. He beat up Anthony Smith quite bad, but he couldn't finish him. And Anthony Smith since has been finished by a lot of people. So he wasn't looking well. He comes back. We only shows us 2 minutes against a Cyril Gane that takes the fight on short notice. There was rumors of being injured. His hand, I remember. The matchup itself favors him. And he's fighting a Stipe Miocic, who I think if you get him in his prime and you get Jon Jones in his prime, I think it's a very competitive fight. I think it's actually a very tough fight for Jon Jones because Miocic is not a slow heavyweight. He's good at scrambling. He's good at wrestling. He's strong as well. He's got good boxing. I think stylistically, if they were both in their prime, I think this would be a very competitive fight. Now, I'm picking Jon Jones because I do think that he is sort of the less washed fighter. I know that sounds a little disrespectful, but I just have more questions about Miocic. But to say that, oh, we absolutely know what we're getting with Jon Jones tonight. And, it's kind of like, I don't know, let me compare him to Islam Makhachev. Like, he fights tomorrow. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. You know exactly what kind of level of fitness, what kind of level of skill you're going to get. I don't have that confidence in Jon Jones. And it's just because we've only seen 2 minutes in 5 years. So, I think absolutely Stipe has been underestimated. And I think there should be more questions being asked about Jon Jones.
And yeah, because when you look at Jon, like he's used his grappling a lot to win fights. I think his last knockout win, well, there was the head kick of Danny Cormier that was overturned. That was a great finish, overturned, of course, to a no contest because he tested positive. But he had that TKO, I believe, of Gustafsson on the ground. Point I'm trying to make is he relies a lot on his grappling, and Stipe is obviously a big, strong heavyweight. Where do you feel like the keys to victory for Jon Jones are here? Because he hasn't traditionally been known as a one-punch knockout guy throughout his career. So where do you feel like his key to victory is here?
I do suspect he'll be faster than Miocic. I believe his reach is still longer, right? Even though he's at heavyweight. Yes. So that being said, with speed and reach, he can stay behind his jab and kind of use his kicks and straight punches to kind of pick him up a bit, pick him apart a bit. And then whenever he sees an opening, maybe shoot for a takedown, maybe grapple a little bit, but shoot more from the hip and down, right? Don't really get into the Greco-Roman wrestling, clinch up with him, because I do think that even though Stipe probably has a lesser technique in the grappling department, just the strength alone, I think that can kind of even things out, and Jon Jones could find himself in some trouble. So that's kind of what I expect. I think people are expecting Jon Jones to walk through Stipe Miocic, but I think we're going to go pretty deep into the fight. I think it's totally possible that Jon Jones finishes Miocic, and I would say that maybe that's the most likely outcome. But don't be surprised if this fight goes over 15 minutes, because Jon Jones, he's going to be very, very careful. So will Miocic. And again, this is heavyweight. You make one wrong move and the night can end pretty quick for you. So I think it's going to be a lot of reach, a lot of rangy striking from Jon Jones with some occasional grappling here and there.
And I'll get to individual odds for Jones's victories in a second. I feel like the key for Jon Jones is in the clinch. I do feel like him picking him apart from the outside is going to work. The leg kicks, he's got the reach advantage. But obviously, Stipe, he had that, well, recent in terms of his record. I know it's been a minute since he's last fought, but he had that knockout loss to Daniel Cormier. It was a short punch. It didn't look like it was the most powerful punch, but he did get him down there. I just feel like the key for Jon Jones, the knees, the elbows, the clinch is going to be very key for him. But let's look at some of the individual odds. Jones by TKO is plus 100, knockout or TKO. We got Jones by submission at plus 200. Jones decision plus 400. And then for Stipe, plus 1,400 by decision, plus 3,500 by submission, and plus 700 by knockout. So what do you like here from the individual odds?
Even though I'm picking Jon Jones, in terms of betting, the lines really influence how much money you or how your bets go. Because I don't feel plus 100 to bet confident, plus 100 confidence to bet that Jon Jones will finish Miocic. However, I also don't feel like at a plus, would you say like 1,400 Stipe by decision? I think that's a lot more likely than that. So I think I wouldn't bet on Jon Jones with this one, despite me picking him. I think him winning by decision or even a TKO, I think it's in the cards, and I think given those odds, I like them.
And the way, as I mentioned previously, the narratives of we're all talking like Jon Jones is the victor here in the aftermath, and Tom Aspinall on what's next. Do you almost feel like just a Jones win is not enough? Like, does he have to dominate Stipe Miocic, or is he going to get a lot of criticism? Like, do you feel like it's not enough just to beat Stipe? Like, he's got to go out there and make it look easy?
Yeah, I really do. I think right now he's obviously being criticized for fighting Miocic and not Aspinall. And I do think if he has a poor performance and somehow gets a win or gets in trouble in the fight, but ends up winning, and it's just a very close fight, and both fighters look a little bit just lessened, which I think all that is very likely. I think a lot of people are going to be saying, no, Aspinall is the best guy here, and he's going to be even more criticized. And people are going to be saying, well, lucky, like you did good by picking a 42-year-old, because Aspinall would have beat you at UFC 309 if you would have picked him. So if Jon Jones wants to sort of shut up the haters, and to an extent, there's going to be a portion of the fan base that he won't be able to, just because how the fan base is. But if he goes out there and Stipe Miocic actually looks good, he looks fast, he looks mobile, and he puts him away in dominant fashion, not just a quick knockout, but actually systematically beat him with skill. I think he can shut a lot of people up with that kind of performance. Enough for people to not be clamoring for a Aspinall fight, probably not, but enough to maybe, call it a day and ride off into the sunset and be like, look, I'm the greatest of all time, and I just proved it.
Does a win or a loss, affect Jon Jones's legacy? Do you think a loss to Stipe is going to affect it?
It depends how he loses. And I think it could. I think a lot of how we view legacy and greatest of all time and this and that, a lot of it is feels, right? Like, it's just not the result itself. It's just how the moment comes across, right? And like, there's just something that you got to feel for you to be like, okay, yeah, this is it. Apart from also having the results in hand and the curriculum to qualify as one of the greatest of all time. So I do think that if Jones loses, the conversation of maybe putting George St. Pierre at number 1, because at least for me, Jon Jones was second to George St. Pierre for a long time. But as soon as he wins that second title, things got a lot more even, and Jon Jones has a better record. Technically, he's never lost, right? We know that. So then I put Jon Jones over GSP. But if he were to lose and were to look bad and lose bad, I think the conversation of who is the greatest, GSP or Jon Jones, I think that conversation gets reignited, and we just have to kind of see then how we feel about it. And that's something that we can obviously only answer after the fact, but maybe to answer your question. And if he wins, I do think he sets himself a step or two apart from George St. Pierre. For those that are still kind of dabbling between those two, look, he'll do something that GSP never did, winning a second title, which is defended.
Right. No, I agree. And in terms of Stipe Miocic, where do you feel like kind of his keys to victory? Obviously, he's got great boxing. I personally think he keeps it on feet. I don't think he tries to grapple with Jon Jones too much, because like I said, I do feel like in the clinch, Jon Jones has an advantage. So I don't know if it would be in Stipe's best interest to get into those positions. He does have power in his hands, and he does have the power advantage when it comes to his boxing. So do you think it's kind of a purely boxing approach from Stipe here?
Yeah, pretty much. I do think he needs to cut the range, and that will eliminate some of the kicking from Jones. If he's very close, he's obviously not gonna kick, because he can lend himself for a counter. Stay close and stay busy with the hands. He does have the higher power, I believe, so he can his shots can definitely be more impacting throughout the fight. And from what we've seen in judging and how fights are judged now, volume is not necessarily everything now. It's really how the punches connect, right? And how much damage someone can do. So I do think that for Miocic is staying in the middle range and putting Jon Jones on his heels. Don't get into a chess match, a shot for shot, a technique for technique. No, you kind of want to just step on the gas and kind of be on his grill from the very go.
And it's plus 700 Miocic by knockout. But my final prediction, I'm gonna go. I don't know why I'm feeling maybe a Jones submission. Maybe a front headlock. Yeah, I don't know. It's a gut instinct. Not front headlock in the style of Cyril Gane, where it's against the fence or anything like that. But I don't know. I'm thinking Jones by submission. How about you?
I'm gonna pick Jon Jones by decision.
All right. Well, let's move on to the co-main event. A banger of a fight. Can I even jinx this fight by saying that it's not like it has to be exciting? I don't think so. Just the way both of these guys fight. Yeah, right. It's not one of those where I could jinx it. But again, of course, Michael Chandler spent a very long time waiting for Conor McGregor. They were scheduled to fight UFC 303 in June. McGregor withdraws. Chandler decides to move on. Were you surprised that it was Chandler Oliveira too? I get it in Chandler's perspective. This is big. It's a guy who beat him already. But for Charles Oliveira, like, are you surprised that he accepted this fight? I know he fights anybody, but you get what I'm saying.
I mean, it's like one of the better fights he can get right now. Gaethje doesn't seem to be available, right? Poirier just fought for the belt and doesn't seem like he was going to fight all that soon, probably waiting until 2025. Oliveira, from what I understand, against Sarukian came out fairly unscathed. So this is a fight that has a lot of eyeballs, obviously, because of the card. It's a rematch. People are really excited to see this one because we already got a glimpse of what it could look like given the first fight. So I think it makes sense for Oliveira. And look, he already beat Chandler, and I think Chandler is just older, right? He is coming off a 2-year layoff. Last time he fought, he lost. So I do think that this is a good matchup for him. This is a good win for him to get a victory over somebody in the top 10, a big name, and kind of cement himself as like, one of the front runners to get the next title shot. Because if we really look at that top 5, everyone's coming off a loss. So if you can at least get one win, that really puts you in a different group compared to everybody else. So no, I think this is a good decision for both.
Yeah, and the lightweight division, because the top 5, there's such big names and fan favorite, the Gaethjes, the Poiriers. We saw that it, like you said, it's literally one win away, one big win away, and they all saved themselves. They know it. And I think Makhachev had tweeted something the other day being like he's going to have his eyes on that fight, even though his win over Oliveira was pretty definitive. Oliveira says he wasn't there at all, but you would think it would be a hard sell for him to get a rematch, but it just seems like at this point at lightweight. And in my opinion, Islam Makhachev already had 3 title defenses tying Khabib. Like, just keep going. It doesn't matter who you're fighting. Like, just keep going. You have an opportunity to separate yourself in a division that's notoriously has been known as the toughest division in the history of the UFC. But looking at this matchup, obviously the first fight was very wild, very chaotic. We saw a bit of everything. We saw the grappling. We saw obviously Chandler knock Oliveira down in round 1, end of round 1, and then get knocked out 19 seconds into round 2. What does Chandler have to do different in your opinion?
Fight smart. Fight smart. I think Chandler could have been UFC champion by now if he would have just had a better fight IQ. And there's so many fights that I picked him to win and he would end up losing just based on his skill set. Because like if you look at the guy's skill set, like he's a problem for everybody. He's very, very good. He just makes really poor decisions in that cage. He doesn't pace himself and he risks too much. And I think against Gaethje, he was winning. Against Poirier, he was winning. Against Oliveira, he was winning. And he lost all those fights because he got too reckless and he got too excited. And I think he prioritized putting on a show over actually winning. I know right now he's saying like, oh, Chandler like 1.0 was focused on wanted to get blood. Chandler 2.0 wants to get the dub or whatever he said, something like that. But I'm afraid that might come a little too late now. At 38 years of age, 2-year layoff. Trying to make that switch now, I think it's a tough one. So I just think Chandler needs to fight smarter, pick his shots. It's okay to not be exciting every single second of the fight. Use his wrestling more, and yeah, basically it. That's it. Just like be a more disciplined fighter. But I think it might be a little bit too late for that at this point in his career.
Yeah, I feel like he can't help it. I mean, he actually went back and forth. He started off like the headlines that were coming out when the fight first got booked was that he was going to be kind of a more composed version of himself. And then literally fight week, he goes most entertaining, steal the show. Like he can't help it. But for me, I mean, like you said, I mean, he's got dynamite in his hands. He's got great wrestling.
Always in shape.
Always in shape. He kind of showed off a bit of a composed Chandler for the shortest amount of time against Dustin Poirier, but he just can't help it every single time. You just can't help.
You can't help it. No.
Yeah, it's almost like it's illegal to win by decision for him because it's like if he goes out there and uses his wrestling and his punches are doing damage, he just gets so overexcited. And against a guy like Charles Oliveira, who's also got power in his hands, got precision, more importantly, crazy jiu-jitsu off his back or jumping on your back or whatnot. I I don't know. I find it hard to pick Chandler just because he just
Yeah.
shoots himself in the foot every single time. And I just feel like, but for me, I don't know if I have odds for this, but I say 100% to finish. How about you?
Yeah, especially because it's booked for 5 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it were 3, maybe you go, okay, 15 minutes of craziness. Maybe it can go that way, but you slap on another 10 extra minutes, and yeah, I don't think this will see the final bell.
Well, according to BetMGM, Oliveira is a minus 275 favorite. Chandler plus 210 underdog. Pretty fair, I'd say, right?
Yeah, I think those odds are fair. Yeah, I like them.
And then individual odds you've got for Chandler plus 350 by knockout, plus 900 by submission, plus 1100 by decision. Just goes back to what we were saying.
Yeah.
And then for Charles Oliveira, plus 1200 by decision, plus 125 by submission, and then plus 200 by knockout. What do you like here?
It's got to be the finish, right? I don't know if BetMGM allows you to bet both, like either submission or knockout. I know some sites do, but like I think Oliveira to win by finish. I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you could do both, like knockout or submission. My general thing would say submission because he's kind of like a club and sub type of guy. But yeah, maybe a club and sub, I'd say here. So I'm going to go Oliveira by decision. By submission.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you like that 1700, huh?
I'll make a lot of money if that was the case. But yeah, I mean, the guaranteed fireworks for that. And like I said, it's an exciting card. I mean, just looking down at it, also on the main card, we've got Bo Nickal, who is the biggest favorite, if I'm not mistaken, at minus 1,400 against plus 800. Yeah, crazy. I know. There's a lot of hype. I know he's good, blah, blah, blah. But wild for me. I think this is disrespectful to Paul Craig. How about you?
I get it. Like, Bo Nickal's really, really good. Paul Craig has been on a decline, 36 years of age. I mean, his odds of winning, he's 1-4 in his past 5 bouts. Everything points that he should lose this fight, and he should probably get stopped. But looking at Paul Craig's record, remember, he's kind of, I've compared him this week to the Michael Johnson of the higher weight classes, because he's got this weird record where it's like, God damn, you got some like nice ass wins, but then you look at some other losses and you're like, what happened? It just, his record kind of just doesn't make sense. He submitted Jamal Hill and he submitted Ankalaev as well. Like, what the hell? I think if he can submit both those guys, I think he can totally submit Bo Nickal. I don't see it likely, but like, I don't know what the Paul Craig for submission is, but I can see a world where he's like getting his ass beat for like 14 minutes, and then, you know, in that final minute, he locks up something on Bo Nickal. I think that's a possibility, but probably not a very big one. But yeah, I expect Bo Nickal to get the finish here.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see a lot of oohs and ahs moments where he's going to whip up something off of his back and the crowd's just going to be like, oh my goodness, type of thing. He's very active off of his back. He's very comfortable off of his back, which obviously is to his detriment in many occasions, because you're just susceptible to ground and pound. And obviously you could wind up losing by decision. But if we look at individual odds, minus 150 for Bo Nickal by TKO KO, plus 175 by submission, plus 750 by decision. And then for Paul Craig, plus 2,800 by decision, plus 1,000 by submission. That's tempting.
Ooh. Plus 1,000 by submission. That's not bad.
And plus 3,000 by KO, TKO. Don't forget the Jamal Hill, I think, was a TKO, right? Yeah, he snapped. Yeah, that was a, or verbal. Yeah. What was that? Was that?
No, I think that counted as submission.
TKO, well, no, I think.
TKO. No, TKO. You're right.
Yeah.
But no, there's no way in hell he's going to TKO Bo Nickal. There's no way in hell. No way. Sub, maybe.
So plus 1,000 is tempting. I'm picking Bo Nickal, but I'm just saying.
You're picking who?
Bo Nickal, but I'm just saying plus 1,000 is very tempting.
Yeah. No, yeah, Bo Nickal should win this one. Yeah. I wouldn't bet on Craig, but like, I'm just saying, if you do like to take some chances, submission is the way to go, because that's the only way he can pull this one off.
What's making me comfortable in my Bo Nickal pick is that Paul Craig is literally a killer be killed type of fighter. Like if Paul Craig's losses were all by decision, then maybe I would have been like, he's got time to work and make something happen. But he's literally a killer be killed type of fighter, which means, like I said, that risk taking, that activity off of his back and all that stuff is what makes him susceptible. You know, you grab onto an arm and now you can get elbows, 12 to 6 elbows aren't legal anymore. Like he's just susceptible to getting hammered from the bottom. But I think it's going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to be some active grappling. I think he's trying to bait Bo Nickal into taking him down because he feels like that's his best chance to win. Although on the feet, I mean, Bo Nickal does look like the sharper, more technical, but he's still very green in his MMA career. I don't know. Do you think there's a world where we just see them stand and it's not going to be the prettiest thing, but do you see a world where they're just standing and striking? Paul Craig does like those kicks down the middle and whatnot.
I just don't think Paul Craig has the power to kind of make Bo Nickal doubt himself and kind of make him non-committal. I think even if he's swinging and connecting, like I don't think it's anything that will ring alarms for Bo Nickal. So I expect him to have the more confidence, sit down on his punches a little bit more. And I don't really trust Craig's chin at this point. So I do think this is going to be a fight that hits the ground, or at least that Craig is going to try to welcome to the ground as much as he can. There's going to be a lot of guard pulling, I feel like.
So you're going Nickal by knockout or submission?
Yeah, I think Nickal finishes it. Knockout, TKO.
That's minus 150. So basically what is projected to happen. But I did talk about him being the biggest favorite. We do have Mauricio Hufi, who's a minus 1,000 favorite. I get it. A lot of hype behind him. And the one that surprised me a little bit and that's maybe you can help me out here because I don't, I'll admit that I have not watched too much of this guy or anything at all. David Onama is a minus 1,200 favorite over Roberto Romero.
Yeah, honestly, I wish are you saying that because I'm Hispanic? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a generalization.
Honestly, I don't know a ton about Roberto Romero. He's from Mexico. He's from Chihuahua, the same city that Jair Rodriguez is from. He's probably a tough dude. 8-3-1, 24 years old. I'm sure he has a bright future, but shit, like debuting against David Onama, that's a tough fight. So, yeah, I think the UFC vet here should have the upper hand here on the odds. I'm not surprised one bit by these.
But minus 1,200, like I get it on Amazon, a 2-fight winning streak, but we're not talking about like what. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the question mark surrounding Roberto Romero, like just people not knowing too much about him.
Maybe that and Onama's a beast, man. Defeating John Pierce, like that's not an easy thing to do. He's also beaten another Mexican in Gabriel Benitez, who I think is very, very tough and very skilled. Roberto just seems very green at this point. So we'll see. Again, whenever you see like such big favorites, you're always a little hesitant because it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's a fight. Like anything can happen. But yeah, I think this is a tough UFC start for Roberto.
I'll find out in a matter of moments. Also got Jim Miller. He keeps on trucking. He takes on Damon Jackson. I like this fight for him, although he is an underdog, but I just feel like that's the kind of level of competition he should be looking at. Do you agree? Yeah,
I agree 100%. And I'm totally okay with Jim Miller fighting. Like he's a guy that sure has taken a lot of damage throughout his career, but I don't know. I just don't get like some weird gross feeling when he fights. Like I know he's up there in age. He's like what, 41? Like for example, Weidman is at a heavier weight class, and maybe we'll get into that in a few minutes, and younger, but yet I feel a little bit weirder about him stepping in the cage than I do with Miller. I think as long as he gets these type of matchups, I'm okay with Jim Miller fighting. I think he's kind of plateaued at a certain level. Obviously, he's no longer in his prime, but I think he's still UFC level. I think he compete with a lot of the guys that are currently on the roster, and I know he's an underdog, or at least before I checked, he should be a slight underdog against Damon Jackson, but I like him winning this fight.
Agreed. And yeah, because obviously the Bobby Green fight, he took a lot of, or King Green, excuse me. He took a lot of damage, but outside of that, he's been on a nice streak. I think he had at 1.1, like five of his past 6 or something like that, including a win over Gabriel Benitez, Okay, Donald Cerrone, maybe not, but Nicholas
Yeah.
Mata, excuse me. So it's like he's looks good.
And
Like
he
you
did
said,
well
yeah,
earlier this year too. Remember, it was like
yeah.
it wasn't that long ago.
And he's looked good. Like outside again, outside of the King Green one where he took quite a bit of damage, he's looked good in his fight. So I have no problem. But yeah, I like him here. He is plus 175 underdog to minus 210 in Damon Jackson. We got plus 450 by knockout, plus 750 by submission, plus 500 by decision. I just feel like there's some money to be made here on Jim Miller.
100%. Yeah. Damian Jackson's tough, but remember, he's coming up from featherweight. He's been knocked out before. Jim Miller's got power. I just think Jim Miller's the bigger and more skilled fighter. I do think Damian should have sort of like a speed advantage here. So like maybe there's a way where he sticks to a certain strategy and just, you know, jabs his way to a victory here. But no, I see Jim Miller winning this one. The dude's still a stud. I think at 41 years old, I think he can still rack up some good wins in the UFC, and I expect this one to be one of them.
I'm gonna go Miller by decision. That's plus 500. How do you think?
I like that. Yeah, that's a good call.
Well, Goes is helping us out saying a line just changed. If he could tell us exactly what it is, but I have it up here at plus 500. Oh, okay, plus 185 now. It did literally just change. Okay, he is at plus 180. 185, plus 185 underdog to minus 225 Jackson. So
for decision?
No, just the overall odds. Like,
okay.
They literally just changed right now as we were talking. So I think he just became a bigger underdog here.
Oh, wow. I'll put money on Miller if I were a betting man.
All right. Well, interesting there. Literally just changed as we were talking. But moving on, moving up the card, I should say. Chris Weidman, Eric Anders. I don't know how I feel about Chris Weidman still fighting. I don't know. I love Chris. He's won a title. He's defended it. He's a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I don't want to see him fight. I get it. He went through a horrific injury. He doesn't want that to be kind of his lasting memory. But I don't know. He looks tentative. He looks hurt. I don't know. I don't like him fighting, period. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, not even one bit. He's had 30 surgeries.
Yeah.
That's not something to brag about. And that's him saying it like to the world. He's had 30 surgeries. He's been like badly knocked out in the past. He's fighting in a weight class where, you know, those are big dudes. They can dish out a lot of damage. I do like the Eric Anders matchup. If he's going to get matched up, I do want like kind of like older guys, you know, kind of the Legends division a bit. But yeah, I think it's time for him to retire. He doesn't have a streak like Jim Miller. Like, yeah, he drops some fights here and there, but for the most part, he wins. That's totally opposite from Weidman. So yeah, no, I don't like this one bit, and I'm hoping this is his final fight.
I think he should have walked away after the last one. I know there was controversy, the eye pokes and whatnot, end up being a technical say, but he looked pretty decent in that fight.
It was in New Jersey as well. He could have left on with a win. Yeah.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to talk about retirement. I guess he hasn't. But something tells me this being at MSG. I don't know. Do you think win or lose he retires? I wish we could get a line for that.
I don't think so. I think he's set on competing, and he's going to continue fighting. I have a feeling.
Oh man. Oh, either way, we'll see how he'll look tonight, because I haven't liked how he's looked since that surgery. The odds right now, minus 115 Anders, minus 105 Weidman. So they're basically pick 'em. And then individual odds, you've got plus 650 Weidman by knockout, plus 900 Weidman by submission, plus 175 decision. And for Anders, plus 175 decision for Anders, plus 1600 submission, and plus 350 knockout. How do you think this goes?
I like Anders by decision. I think this fight goes the distance.
Plus 175. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I picked Anders. I can't remember, but I think I picked Anders. But yeah, I don't know. But one fight that I am very excited about, Jonathan Martinez and Marcus McGee. That's one that Dana White highlighted when he does his videos. That's a great fight. Martinez, Aldo was his last fight, right? It's the loss to Jose Aldo. Yeah. I guess that prior to that, he was on a very nice winning streak, including a win over Adrian Yanez. Is that a correct way to say it?
Yanez, yeah. That's actually one of my, that's like my fifth last name or something like that.
Okay. Well, yeah, but he's been on a nice streak. But Marcus McGee has looked very excited. What? Yeah, okay, you're double checking.
Daniel Segura Garcia Barrero Yáñez Guzmán Martín.
All right, there you go. I will not introduce you as that. It'll take me a while to memorize that.
I don't expect you to,
but yeah, this is a great fight. Marcus McGee has looked very exciting. Jonathan Martinez obviously has a lot of experience. How do you see, before I get to the odds, that kind of who do you like here in this fight?
I think this can go either way. I agree with the odds here. I don't have a problem with Marcus McGee kind of being a little bit of the favorite. He's looked like a stud. He comes from a good gym, super, super athletic, very, very dangerous guy. But man, I got to go with Jonathan Martinez here. I just think he is all in all like the better and more well-rounded fighter. Those kicks, man, they're a problem. Yeah, he didn't look great against Aldo, but I don't think that was mainly like a skill issue. I feel like it was a lot here, a lot mental. He kind of got a little bit gun shy at seeing, the legend of Jose Aldo, and also fighting in Brazil, man. That's never easy. So I actually like here Martinez by either TKO or decision.
Let's look at the individual odds for that. So you said TKO. Well, TKO would be plus 400, excuse me. Plus 400. The submission would be plus 1400, and then decision plus 225. McGee, if I'm not mistaken, has a 100% finish rate. I don't know. Someone can correct me on that. But for him, it would be, where are we? Plus 250 decision, McGee, plus 1400 submission, and plus 200 knockout. Plus 1400 by submission. Interesting. I don't know. I'm not going to pick that, but that's no, right? I think the distance.
You're picking who?
I said I think I'm going to go McGee by decision. That's plus 250.
Okay. Yeah, see, that's not bad at all. I think anywhere you go with this one, I think, I mean, you can make a case for it. I can't call you crazy if you say Martinez by decision or finish, or McGee by decision or finish. I think it can go either way.
And before we wrap up, when I let you go, because I know you're going to be on duty for play-by-play, looking at the kind of the early prelims or just the prelims in general, is there a fight or a fighter that you want to highlight, someone that you feel like is one to watch tonight?
In terms of the sport, or are we talking betting here?
Both.
Okay. In terms of sporting wise, we didn't talk a ton about Mauricio Ruffi, but
yeah,
I'm so excited to see him fight. I think that guy promises to be, one of the future contenders in that division. And just look at what like Fighting Nerds have done. Like this guy is definitely part of that wave. And I think he's got an opponent here that just kind of lends himself to be kind of a good style matchup for Ruffi. So I expect this to be a very exciting striking fight. If it wasn't for that co-main event, I would actually pick that fight to be as fight of the night. I think there's going to be a lot of action there. But yeah, I'm excited to see Ruffi. Let's see what he shows. He had an incredible debut, and let's see how he follows up on that. The odds are crazy. I wouldn't bet on that one. I don't see much value anywhere on that. I want to highlight, though, in terms of betting, Marcin Tybura, I don't know how it's properly pronounced, against Jonathan Diniz. I think Tybura's being slept on. He's an underdog, and I think he's being slept on, or I don't know if the odds change, but I like him probably winning by just submission. I think that's very likely. Diniz is very good, and I think he's going to be a heavyweight that's going to stick around for some time, but I think he's very untested, and contrary to Diniz, Tybura is very tested. So I like him winning. And also, I just want to shout out Veronica Hardy, 3-fight winning streak in women's flyweight, a very difficult division, probably the most difficult division on the women's side of things. A 4-fight winning streak here potentially is not nothing. I don't think that she'll exactly enter the rankings with this, but maybe, who knows? And I think at the very least, if she wins, she'll get to fight somebody in the rankings for a spot there. So she's had a nice resurgence since she came back 3-0. She's looked good. So I just want to see how far she can take this, because at one point she was a very promising figure and had a terrible start to her career, but that's changed quite drastically. So I want to see if she can continue it.
Yeah, and to go back to Marcin Tybura, because he's fought everybody. like literally. And
Definitely.
I have to admit, I'm guilty of this. I do end up sleeping on him all the time. I mean, but you know, his last few fights, Spivak, Tuivasa, Aspinall, Ivanov, Romanov, Volkov, all the offs. Like he just fights like a lot of tough guys, like
Yeah, he
at
does.
heavyweight. He does. But yeah, I can't. What did I pick? I don't even remember anymore. I just gotta go with
Hmm.
the butt. But yeah, I don't feel like I picked him. I don't know if I ever pick him. That's the thing. He's one of those guys that I never pick, but then he ends up surprising me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you said you like him by submission,
Yeah. Yeah. I like him by
plus two
submission.
fifty.
I think Denise is very untested on the ground. Like we just don't know, and I think we can see a submission there.
Yeah, Tabora definitely would probably want to take the fight there
Yeah, I don't
as
think he's
opposed
gonna
to.
want to strike.
I agree, and we'll close out with this two scenarios that you see, and you're going to continue the sentence. What happens if Jon Jones wins with the heavyweight division? What, in your opinion, what happens if Stipe Miocic wins?
If Jon Jones wins, we're gonna see a stalemate and that sort of title be frozen, and I think um, he'll eventually fight for the BMF title or something and end up vacating the heavyweight title and fighting Pereira. I think that fight's like very big. The UFC likes making money, and I think they'll find a way to kind of figure things out. If they can get one more fight out of Jon Jones, I think they will do everything in their power to make that happen. But unfortunately, I don't think it'll be against Aspinall. So I think there'll probably be some vacating the belt and then him moving on to fighting for a BMF or something. If Stipe Miocic wins, man, that'd be insane. I think Miocic fights Aspinall. I think he does. Um, I don't think he'll retire. I think at this point, Miocic doesn't really care all that much about legacy. He doesn't give a fuck about what anybody thinks about him. He just likes to,
Yeah.
fight and put some money in his pockets. And he can get one more championship fight, pay-per-view points, and with a chance of winning against Aspinall, I think he does it. It's a nice payday. So I think as long as Miocic doesn't have either a fight for the belt or is not defending a belt, he retires. But as long as that's in play, he's going to keep fighting.
And he's, in a lot of people's eyes, the greatest heavyweight of all time. Is he your greatest heavyweight of all time? Before I ask part B.
Man, this is such a tough question because I say yes because technically he did defend the belt more than anybody at heavyweight, and that is something. So I think he's the most successful heavyweight in UFC history. But who do I think is the best? I think the best heavyweight I've ever seen in my entire life is Cain Velasquez. When he was in his prime,
Yeah.
I think he could beat anybody. Just unfortunately, he wasn't able to achieve as much as he promised to achieve because of injuries. So I think the best is Cain Velasquez, but in terms of achievement, we'll say the most accomplished, that's Stipe Miocic.
We talked earlier about Jon Jones's legacy, but how about Stipe Miocic's legacy? Obviously, adding Jon Jones to your resume, that's an obvious question. But do you think a loss to Jon Jones does anything affect his legacy in any way? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think he'll still be considered as the greatest heavyweight. And remember, greatest is tied to achievement. So the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. And I don't think that'll change win or lose. I mean, if he wins, he'll solidify a little bit more. If he loses, maybe he'll get a little bit of doubters, but more or less he'll stay in that middle range, I think.
Pereira versus Jones, much bigger fight than Aspinall versus Jones, in your opinion?
100%. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Even Miocic versus Jones is bigger than Jones versus Aspinall. Like Jones is 100% right in that. Look, my brother, who I say with all the respect, he's a casual MMA fan. He used to be a hardcore, but now only tunes into the big fights. This week he was like, "Oh, Jon Jones is fighting Miocic. That's a big fight." And I'm like, "Well, let me explain to you." And we went down that rabbit hole. But I think a lot of people recognize the name Miocic, obviously recognize the name Jones, and legacy-wise, yeah, it's a big fight. But yeah, Pereira right now is a complete superstar. If he were to fight Jones, I mean, that'll be probably the most successful UFC pay-per-view outside of a Conor McGregor fight in the last half decade, maybe.
So you don't buy it when Dana White says the winner has to fight Aspinall?
I do like to think that like the UFC will bend the rules in order to get some paydays in big events, but up to a certain extent, I do think they see themselves as the sport pretty much, and they pretty much are. So they have to some degree of responsibility to kind of keep some order and keep some sort of rules. And I think they've kind of bent the rules enough to make this fight happen. And I think this is their limit, or at least I'd like to think that. So I actually commend and respect Dana White a lot for saying it in front of Jon Jones, like, no, the winner here either dips or is fighting Aspinall. That's it. Because that's the way it should be. It'll be a slap to the sport, a slap to Aspinall if he doesn't fight for the undisputed title next, whether it be with Jon Jones or somebody else. Aspinall 100% needs to be fighting for the undisputed belt.
I agree. All right, last one. I lied. Give me at the end of the night your performance of the night, excuse me.
Okay.
And fight of the night. Sometimes we don't get a fight of the night, but something tells me we probably will.
Yeah. Fight of the night, I'm going to go with a sleeper here, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. I know a lot of people are not considering it to be a fight of the night, but trust me, I have a feeling this one's going to be a banger. I don't know, something about both these guys and the stare down. Something tells me this is going to be a good fight. So I'm going to go with fight of the night, Oliveira versus Chandler. Performance of the night, I'm going to go Bo Nickal. I think he's going to get a finish, and just for the hype, they're going to throw a bonus his way, and he's going to deserve it. I'm not saying he's undeserving. And for the other, I'm going to go Mauricio Ruffi. I think he's going to do something spectacular. And man, those fighting nerds have been cashing checks, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Those are good picks. Those are, I'd probably go with those as well. I'm trying to think who else I could just throw in as a, I don't know. Looking at it, maybe Marcus
There's
McGee.
a chance that the co-main event could get a double performance and fight of the night. Like if Oliveira gets some crazy ass submission, like I can see him get 100K. Or even Chandler. Like if he gets a crazy stoppage after some crazy fight, I think could be double. We might be looking at fight of the year here, really.
That's true. That's true. They should have a separate. Well, you can't determine fight of the year until obviously. Well, we are almost at the end of the year anyway. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. Obviously, Danny's going to be on play-by-play tonight, so check that out at MMA Junkie. Appreciate you joining me. And guys, we are literally a matter of minutes away from the fight, so tune in. All right. Before I wrap up here, I'm going to be joined by Goes, who's going to give me his picks for tonight. Of course, don't forget George and Goes are going to be doing a watch along at 8 p.m. Eastern. So have some fun with them. What's up, Goes? How's it going?
Good. I actually love arguing with Danny, but he made very solid points. I was agreeing with a lot of what he says.
What did you think you were going to argue with him about?
Everything. When we do spinning back, like him and I are always arguing, but I kind of agreed with a lot of his takes here for these fights.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cards where I feel like the narratives are pretty obvious. Like Bo Nickal, massive favorite, supposed to win. Jon Jones, big favorite, supposed to win. Most likely won't fight Aspinall, yada, yada, yada. So I feel like the exciting, what will make this kind of MSG has delivered so many crazy moments, right? So I feel like I have this gut feeling that someone is going to do something crazy, like throw a wrench in some sort of plan. I don't know who exactly, but it just, and it's like Oliveira Chandler is going to be a fight of the year contender, right? Like the narratives are so obvious, like for tonight, but at the same time, I feel like we could be in for something like pretty crazy. Who do you feel like has potential of delivering the craziest moment tonight?
There's so many of them. I was telling a buddy earlier, like the kind of law of gambling is bet the underdogs and you'll never go hungry, right? And when you think about, especially in our sport, we spend so much time nitpicking certain scenarios, right? Like what is Stipe Miocic doing here? Why is he fighting Jon Jones? And how many times I think Dana White thinks we have to eat crow come Monday because something happens and he sees, see, this is why I do that. Nobody's criticizing the fact that Stipe Miocic could have a chance in the fight. It's the fight itself that we don't like, that fight was put together. But really, now that it's all said and done, there's nothing we can do about it. Here we are, fight night. Stipe Miocic, he could win this fight. I mean, that could always happen. There's not much we have to go off of Jon Jones. And as Danny said, it wasn't that long ago that we were feeling that maybe he was slowing down a little bit against light heavyweights and wasn't having the best performances. Stipe, you could say what you want about him, but he gives you an honest camp every time. Every fight he comes in, you don't feel like he was out partying or screwing around. Like he tries. Sometimes it just doesn't work out for him, right? And you look at some of the people he's faced, you can't blame him. That's why people consider him one of the best heavyweights that ever lived. So Stipe could do that, right? You look at the Charles Oliveira match with Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler could do something like that.
Yeah.
Look, even if you look at Paul Craig and what he's been able to do in his career so far, he's the ultimate spoiler. He's done this to a lot of people. He could do that to Bo Nickal. Like, as great as Bo Nickal is a good fighter, but a lot of people confuse him and they say he's a great fighter. He could develop into a great fighter. He has all the
Yeah.
tools you need to do that, right? A guy like Aaron Pico is kind of like that too. He could be a great fighter, but we just don't know just yet. And these are the type of fights that help identify that, right? If he could maybe put away Paul Craig like that in that fashion, then it's going to take us one step further to maybe one day start talking about. I think, when we talk about Hamza Chimaev, and I know how high you are on him, a little too soon here, all right? Like, it's this guy's career is barely blowing up. These are the type of fights that get us there. So I think those are like three guys, I think, right off the bat, that could maybe spoil the party tonight.
And that's a crazy thing because Paul Craig winning would statistically be one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, but I wouldn't even see it that way. I just feel like Bo Nickal, like, I know he's good. I know he's a standout wrestler, but who has he fought? Like, what have we seen?
Exactly.
He's still very green. I know the potential is crazy, and I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if he ends up being a top contender at 85. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes these odds are a little confusing. Like, what are we basing off? We're basing it off of potential, not what we've seen, essentially, when it comes to Bo Nickal. Yeah.
He's minus 1400. So those of you who
Yeah.
love other sports, and I know, Farah, you're a big basketball fan, right? Essentially what they're saying is he's going to win, if this were basketball, by like 20 points or something like that. And when you can make that bold of a prediction, you're saying somebody's going to get smashed. And I just don't see that in this fight. I don't see that potential here. It's a very bold statement for a guy that we just haven't seen that much of.
But I will say I do like his confidence, because I think it was his interview with Ariel Helwani where he was just like, oh, I thought I would have been a bigger favorite. Like,
yeah, that's fun. And that's what makes you kind of gravitate to a person like that, right? A lot of people have gravitated to a Bo Nickal. And the UFC, look, constantly, every other card, I feel like we're saying goodbye to people and they have to replenish those stars. And a guy like Bo Nickal is somebody that could replenish some of the people that we've lost.
And I feel like the UFC could use a new kind of American hero, because a lot of the stars lately have been kind of international stars. The Alex Pereiras, we've got Islam Makhachev, Ilya Topuria. I feel like the UFC could use a good old American star. I honestly think that, like, he fits the bill. He can tick those boxes for the UFC, and a guy with that much hype and the wrestling credentials. I know he's not the best on the microphone. He doesn't even care to be that kind of guy. But if he continues to do that, like, run through. What's up?
Well, no, I was just going to say a guy that we've always felt like could maybe take that step as well for the United States is a guy like Michael Chandler, but he's just never been able to put things together into a streak. And then, he's been following Conor McGregor for the last 2 years. So potentially, those two guys get a win. I think that'd be nice for us over here in the States.
Yeah, well, it's going to go down in literally a couple of minutes, 2 minutes here as we wrap up. I asked Danny this, give me who's getting the performance of the night today, who's getting fight of the night, or maybe we just get 4 performance bonuses.
Well, fight of the night, I think it could be actually one. I think Jim Miller, when you look at that fight, like, those two guys, they always come out to fight. And I could see there being back and forth in that fight. I do have Jim Miller maybe slightly winning that fight, but I think it could be very bloody. I think it could be a lot of back and forth. So I could see something like that happening. Performance, maybe like a Michael Chandler, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, if he gets the win, it would be a big deal. But don't you kind of feel like the UFC owes him a little something because of what he's been through for the last couple of years? So I could see them easily going, hey, let's make this guy happy. Let's give him something here.
Well, hence him getting this fight in the first place. But actually, that fight didn't win fight of the night, Chandler Oliveira. I think Oliveira got a performance of the night bonus as well. Mm-hmm. That could have easily been fight of the night. I got to remember what was the fight of the night of that.
I mean, over 5 rounds, especially if it goes 5 rounds, like, I can't imagine that being a 5-round fight and it being boring. If it goes 5 rounds, there's going to be a lot of back and forth between those guys. So I could see that one being the fight of the night as well.
It was Barbosa and Burgos that got fight of the night over Chandler Oliveira. It ended up being a performance bonus for Oliveira. By the way, going to be an absolute banger. And fights are literally live right now. So Goes, appreciate you helping me wrap up the show. Guys, don't forget to join George and Goes for the watch along, 8 p.m. Eastern. We've got Mike Bond and Ken Hathaway on site in New York. We've got you covered in all aspects here at MMA Junkie. So thank you guys for joining.